First off, I love my kids.
This is Learning to Dad.
I'm the cool dad. That's my thing.
With Tyler Ross.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills.
I'm gonna have fun, and you're gonna have fun.
All right. Hello and welcome to Learning to Dad with Tyler Ross. I am Tyler Ross. This is our first video interview. You know what I look like now. And I'm with Thomas Benjamin, one of my best all-time favorite friends and people on the planet. We have our complimentary blue light glasses on to protect us from staring at these screens, which we'll probably talk a little bit about that too. But thanks a lot for spending time with me, man.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. This is a new and exciting thing you got going on here.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of new and exciting, you are the guest who gets the privilege of introducing to the podcast series Expecting Dad. Like, you are not yet like have children on the ground. I just got distracted because I can see my reflection in your glass.
You can see what I'm seeing.
A little bit. It's a handsome dude.
I'm on a browser right now, not even doing anything.
You're playing solitaire while you're talking to me.
Yeah. Minesweeper.
Yeah. So the intent of this entire Minesweeper, I haven't played that in ages. So the intent.
I don't know how to play that game. It's completely scary to me, and the high stakes for just a game that you're playing with. You know,
my heart has never raced so much. Like, telling me. Yeah. So the
bomb defusing, not for me.
So the intent of this podcast, as you may or may not know, is for me to learn about being a dad and to share that information, because there's no pamphlet on earth that can tell you how to raise your kid or any other kid. And there's no metric by which we can measure how good of a dad you are or are going to be. Whereas in business, there's a balance sheet. In your business, there's ratings. So that's the goal, is to try to extract some ideas and some feelings and from people that are analytical, which you might analyze stuff sometimes. And so let's get rolling. I want to talk a little bit first about what it is that you're doing for a living now.
Sure. Well, Tyler, a lot has happened since you and I grew up together in Virginia. I'm presently in Los Angeles. I work at a production company called Stearns Castle. We have a deal at ABC Studios, so I'm actually here on the Disney lot in the old animation building, which is a Burbank landmark, because this is where Walt Disney spent most of his professional career, on the third floor of this building. So anyways, I am a director of development. I read scripts, meet writers, try to put shows together. One of the shows I'd say we're best known for is a show called American Crime, which we produced with a writer named John Ridley, who won an Academy Award for 12 Years a Slave. The show, ran for 3 seasons on ABC. It was nominated for, I think, 16 Emmys and 5 Golden Globes, and it was fun. It was Regina King, it was Felicity Huffman. Anyways, that's one of the shows we did. And so that's something that I was involved in from the, putting it together in terms of, writers and directors and ideas and all that stuff, all the way up through, shooting and then post-production and even marketing to some extent. So that's, the template of what we aim to do. We try to, pitch a show, get it sold, and put it on the air. We have a deal at ABC Studios, so they kind of bankroll us as we try to find our next show. So, every year we sell a few shows to ABC. Right now we have a show at Netflix called Monarca, which is Spanish language, that we're producing with Salma Hayek. So yeah, I mean, I really pinch myself every day that I come into work and kind of just shoot the crap with really interesting, creative people and talk about their ideas as if they're this tangible thing in the world, which they are. So yeah, that's where I am. I've been here for about 5 years, and things are going great so far. Just looking for that next show.
Well, and I enjoy talking to you about this so much, and we could probably bore listeners with it. But I know there are a lot of people out there that I'm sure would love to break into movies on one side of the camera or the other, and either in LA or these other places that are making it easier to bring films in. But I'd love to hear about kind of your start. Like, what was your introduction to this industry and where?
Sure. Yeah. So, a little background. I went to Virginia Tech. I, knew from a very young age that I was interested in film, and actually had trouble kind of honing in on exactly what I wanted to do when I was in college. And, I did know that I was interested in film. So I was a comm major. I took some film studies classes, Virginia Tech at the time. I don't know what they're doing now, although I just got invited to an alumni event at Netflix through them. So maybe they're on the up and up. I don't know. But anyways, yeah. So, took some film studies classes, graduated, and was like, I think I want to be in entertainment. I don't know what that means. I hear, LA is the place to go. So I drove out and had some friends that were already out here and kind of, just started, pounding the pavement, kind of finding any lead I had. I have some older sisters who had some friends that were in the industry. So they hit them up for me on my behalf and said, hey, my brother's in LA and wants to get into entertainment. Would you sit down with them? So I bought a bunch of coffees for a bunch of people and, just picked their brain while also letting it be known that I was young and hungry and wanting to learn and was happy to learn however I could. So at that point, one of those coffees turned into, hey, there's a company called Leverage, which is run by this guy named Steven Levinson. And, he's Mark Wahlberg's manager and producing partner. So they were like, hey, they were looking for an intern to kind of just help around the office. And I thought that was awesome because at the time, Entourage was still going. Boardwalk Empire, I think, had just started. And I don't know, there's a lot of cool, fun stuff going. So at that point in time, that was production company, but also, their management company. They had, I don't know, 5 or 6 managers at the time and maybe, between 70 and 100 clients, mostly actors, but some writers and directors. And so I was just putting together furniture and running errands and doing all sorts of stuff. And then at one point, one of the assistants left with one of the managers, very, scandalous, kind of in the middle of the night, went to another company, and one of the managers needed an assistant to help out on the desk, just answer phones and whatnot. And I jumped in and made myself be helpful. And so through that, he was looking, I thought I was just going to be helping out because at the time I wasn't sure exactly if I wanted to be an assistant or go be a writer, or, there's a million routes you can take when you're out here. But I seemed to do a good enough job where he actually offered me a job and said, hey, this could be fun. Why don't you can learn the ropes through, being an assistant. And through that, I was able to, kind of learn the ropes, see how the industry works. It was interesting because he had a lot of acting clients and I was at the time calling up casting directors and pitching, his clients that I didn't really have any skin in the game with. And so that wore on me very quickly. I think I can be a good salesman, especially a production company, when you believe in an idea. But when you're kind of pitching writers to casting directors don't want to talk to you, that I gave up on that quick. I was like, I'm not a manager. I don't want to be a manager. I'm very much interested in the creative process. I like his, writers and directing clients. I like looking at their pitch documents and their scripts and, analytically kind of looking at that stuff. But the other stuff I don't like. So, I knew I liked some things, but I didn't like being a manager, and they were kind of grooming me to be a manager. So at that time I was like, I'm just going to get out of here. So I actually ended up going to New York because everyone should listen to this, needs to be young and in New York at some point in their life, because it is, it tests your mettle, it toughens you up, and it's just such a fun, fulfilling experience because, New York is a city that's amazing. It's a magnet, but it's a magnet that gets polarized differently at all times. It pushes, it doesn't want you there ever. So it does toughen you up. And, anyways, I can go into the whole thing about how LA makes you very soft. And, there's that song that talks about New York making you hard and LA making you soft. It's very true. But anyways, I was in New York. I was working at ABC doing some daytime development stuff, which, I'm not a 45-year-old woman. I don't really care about daytime development or daytime television, but it was, a way to pay bills. But I met my wife, who we'll be talking about here in a little bit as well, because she's kind of a big component of this whole pregnancy thing. Some might say even 50 to 75. Anyways, but we met, we fell in love, and she was like, hey, so what's your long-term plan here? And I was like, I'm young and in New York and it's all good. I'll figure out what I need to figure out. And, I'm still young. And I think, it was one of those moments in your life when she said, well, you're not that young. And I realized in that moment, I was like, you're right, I'm not. And if I want to be on a career track, which I've always talked about, I kind of need to get back on the career track. So at that time, I started just using every piece of goodwill that I had at ABC to work, every kind of relationship I had to find a job back in LA, because as listeners may or may not know, there's not a lot of, scripted television or even movies in New York. There's productions going on, but the hub of development and especially scripted is in LA. So one interview turned into another interview, which I didn't get those, and it was actually a good thing. But I was, and please stop me if I'm going on too long, but one thing turned into another, and I was able to get a job offer here at this production company. My boss, his name is Michael McDonald, was leaving his job as head of development at ABC Studios to start a production company, and to me that was the perfect opportunity. And it was just going to be him and someone else, so doing a lot of menial tasks, administrative stuff, but also being on the front line for everything. And I was like, this is how I make up for whatever lost time. I lost about 3.5 years in New York. Was like, this is how I make up for it. I'm going to be on the front lines. I'm going to pay him whatever dues. I'm going to take whatever steps back I need to take to get ahead in the long run. And he hired me. I jumped in a bus, went down to Virginia, bought a car, and was out here 8 days later, and have been at the production company ever since. And again, that was 5 years ago, and I've risen through the ranks. He's promoted me, and we had American Crime the first year of our development, which doesn't happen, and that snowballed into other things. And so we've been here for 5 years and going strong. So that is a very light explanation of where I've been and through career-wise, but it's been a really fun journey. And I think it speaks to your original question was about how does someone do this, and I think the answer and what I love about meeting with writers or other producers, and we talk about kind of our route to where we are presently. It's so interesting to me because every story is so different. A lot of people come up through agencies, or some people come up through management companies, some people start at studios, some people start in the Page program at NBC, and it's just, there's no one way. And I think it's, my kind of mantra is, as long as I'm learning, I'm in a good place. And as long as I'm, creatively fulfilled, I feel good about things. So that's really the bottom line. It's like, just hustle, man, have good relationships, because it's a small town. It's all about relationships, and you don't want to burn bridges, because, it's a true fact that, yesterday's assistant is tomorrow's, studio head. And so it's really all about hustle, making relationships, and, being in the mix.
Well, I can testify to your being in the mix and hustling, because I've known you for so long and known your intentions for so long. Would you say that, I know you kind of answered the question in your response, but would you say that your trajectory is totally atypical, or is that not unusual for people in your industry, and particularly on the trajectory you sought, to bounce around a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I did take a bit of a tangential move when I went to New York, but part of that move to New York was, and that's part of what I didn't really explain, was the way I made that trip back to New York was Lev, the head of Leverage, Stephen Levinson, was producing a show in New York. So I used that to get to New York. I worked on set with him for a few months, and that was probably one of the crazier experiences in my life, just in terms of working for someone on set and someone with a personality like that. Greatest guy in the world, but a total maniac in the best way. And so that at least got me to New York. That got me 3 months of experience, of like basically boot camp experience of being on set, doing all sorts of things. So to take that and then be looking for a job and then working for ABC Daytime, again, it feels tangential. It feels like it's atypical, but at the same time, what I went to ABC for was the Katie Couric show was starting in New York, and my boss had brought Katie from her CBS evening show to the daytime, and it was really interesting because it topically it's like daytime whatever, but at the same time, your people on these shows they're producers, they're producing stories. It's all about storytelling, right? So I was like, okay, that's what this is. And at the same time, I've used a lot of the skills that I developed working in daytime development for the job that I do now, because again, it's putting packages together. We did a show with Reverend Run and his wife, and that whole thing, doing that on a crazy tiny budget and making it have to work in about 2 weeks, that all translates. It's different forms of storytelling, but again, it's all producing, it's all doing those things. So I'm a little bit off script in terms of what you asked, but the point is, I think that the atypical story or journey is typical, because no one takes it any one way. And it really depends on what you want to be doing. I think, there are those people that come out here, have a relationship, work for a writer, if that's what they want to be doing. The writer, creates a television show. They get on in the writer's room, or they, work for their company and become executive through their company. That happens. But again, I think it's a lot of bouncing around to see where you fit, because again, there's, I can be in any number of USC or NYU film classes. Until you're on set out in LA, or even learning on the job being an assistant, you don't know how this town works. And there's so many different places where it's interesting. It's like a sorting hat. It's like, okay, you belong over there because you have this skill that I can, I think like most people want to get entertainment, or some form of storytelling, probably wanted to be a director when they were younger. But as I've gone through this town, I realized that, oh, that's not what I want to be doing at all. And I don't want to be, involved intimately with one project, with no vision of anything else for years at a time. I'd rather have 5 projects going or 10 projects going and kind of have a more 30,000 foot view of things. And until you're out here, until you're doing those things, you don't really, realize exactly where you fit in the grand scheme of things, or what your skill set or what your personality does. I like being passionate about what I like being passionate about, but as I was learning about working for a manager, I can't be passionate about his, clients that I don't have a relationship with, or honestly don't maybe think are that talented at the end of the day. I can't fake it. And that's a lot of what agenting and managing is. So I was like, okay, let's go to this thing that I actually am good at, or the analytical part of breaking down a script and seeing how it works or why it doesn't. That's fun for me, And I think as someone who wants to be in entertainment learns as they go through, they're like, okay, I like this, I don't like this. And then they are further closer to what their end goal is.
Well, so somebody now, the context is different than it was when you went out to LA for the first time. So in today's context, I'm sure you've seen a lot of total greenies come into the industry saying, I'm trying to get a job, trying to get an internship. Like, what's the maybe best advice you could give to somebody who wants to come out to LA? And first, I want to point out that you're a testament to being able to get to that level from little old Warrenton, Virginia.
It's honestly, and I think, I mean, there are a couple of pieces of wisdom I can give throughout this process, but again, it's really not that hard. I think that it can be overwhelming, and even, looking back on it, I'm like, who was I to think that I could just come out here and do this? But at the end of the day, it's not as hard as you think it is. Once you're out here, if you do a good job and if you're dependable and likable, by the way, just if people can stand being around you for 10 hours, 12 hours a day, because you do work these crazy hours, you've already got, an advantage on other people, because, the crazy thing about the world is that not that many people do that great a job at things. There are a lot of lazy people who, don't quite get it. And so if you get it, and if you're willing to work your ass off, you're already light years ahead of everyone else. If you show up on time, you're light years ahead of everyone else. So, I think that's the first piece of advice. And I think the other, thing I'd say about, someone not knowing how any of this works is something, and I'll break it down by explaining kind of what I would have done differently if I had it to do it all over again. Because again, I didn't know anything. And I think if someone comes to LA with a 100% clear goal of what they want to be, I want to be a director. There's a way to do that. You go to film school, you learn your craft, and through that you get those kind of connections. If you just come out here and like you like being part of the process and you want to learn how it works, but you're not quite sure how that goes, and I would put myself in that bucket when I first came out here 10 years ago. I would say that starting in an agency mailroom is the best way to get a lay of the land, and for several reasons. It's you're literally in the mailroom. You're handing out mail to the different agents, so you're seeing how that thing works. You're getting FaceTime with all the assistants. And then once you kind of prove that you're capable of that, assistants out, you sit on their desk and you start answering the phone for that person, or running an errand for that agent or whoever it is. And just through that, agents, really have their tentacles in every piece of the entertainment industry. And so that's a great place to start, because again, you put in your dues there for, and again, if you're in the mailroom, then you do a good job. You can jump on the desk when someone leaves, and then you're an assistant for a couple of years. And at that point, you don't want to be an agent, but at the same time, you built all these great relationships. You have a cohort group, which you're going to be growing up through the industry with. And at the same time, you're understanding how everything works, because an agency like, let's say WME or CAA, some of the UTA, ICM, some of the big agencies, they have writers, they have directors, they have they have actors, of course, they have, these branding agencies, they have all these different stuff. They have relationships with all of the studios, and they have, relationships with all the networks. And so you get a very holistic view of entertainment industry, because again, until you're out here and you're part of it, you don't quite understand how all these things kind of fit within each other. But an agency will probably give you that view. And then once you pay your dues, once you're there, once you make those relationships, that's when you can kind of get help from the agency, or even just through the relationships that you've gotten, to go somewhere else, to go to a studio, to your boss, will know everyone at Netflix and say, hey, I've got this great person that wants to be a coordinator over there, or whatever. And then you're over there. And again, it's in their best interest too, because now they have a loyal person who's worked with them for 2 years now at Netflix. And so they can call you up and say, hey, what's going on in your department? What's going on at Netflix Originals right now? Oh, we have a need for this thing. Oh, well, hey, this writer's looking for this project. What do you think? And so again, it's all about relationships and showing up on time, having those relationships, doing right by people, and then, figuring out what you want to do by understanding exactly where you best fit into the whole, puzzle.
So what do you think for the person who's going to, on their way out there right now, they're driving through Arizona on their way, and they have expectations? What is going to be their biggest misconception of entering into the industry?
I don't know. It's interesting, because I think that, and maybe this is going to be part of a bigger conversation, or an existential conversation at the end of it, because there's just I just know 10 years ago, and I think things have I was actually talking to a couple buddies that are in the industry in different facets. A couple of them are a few years ahead of me, a couple of them are a few years behind me, but just this idea of Me Too and millennials, and this whole thing about, when I came into the industry, like, people were still getting, like, staplers thrown at them by their bosses. And, there was just a certain amount of, you're an assistant, put your head down, shut up, do your work, you're nothing, get out of here, basically. And again, I've had the luck of having some bosses that aren't that crazy. But again, I mean, I've seen some stuff. I've seen some stuff for sure.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, you have millennials coming out there, and I think that, and I don't want to paint them with this brush, because I think there's something amazing about this idea of, you hear about, there's some lawsuits going on with unpaid interns at, I think it was Sony or some other places, and they're like, no, I'm doing work for you, I deserve money, like, this isn't slave labor, give me, like, I'm do something. I would never have thought that 10 years ago, because it's like, I was an unpaid intern in some places. I was a PA on some stuff, and I was just happy to be there. But again, it never occurred to me to demand anything, and I think part of that's great, but the other side of it is, well, you're also getting this great opportunity, and everyone's done this, so you pay your dues. So I'm always like of two minds. I'm like, I respect the fact that actually things are going to change, and people are going to get paid with their worth, even if they are interns and they're learning. But at the other side of it is like, I'm like, I put in some crazy dues and made it work by doing odd jobs on the side to be able to afford this experience, and why should it be different for anyone else? So I think the misconception is that it's easy, or that you're entitled to anything. But again, I don't want to slip into that trap of, like, millennials just expect the world, because I don't know if that's necessarily true either. I just think that they're kind of not willing to put up with what maybe I was willing to put up with, but I don't know why I should have felt like I should have. Other than that, it's just, this is how things have worked forever. Is that really a reason to tell people to toughen up or suck it up? I don't know. So the misconception, just of the fact that you really have to pay your dues, and it's not going to come easily. And I think that I've met a lot of people. I've had interns at ABC. I've had interns here that seem to have a lot of expectations and aren't willing to do the hard work. And that's when I'm like, what are you doing? This is part of the game, is you sitting here proving to me that you can take on all this stuff, and that you're willing to take on all this stuff. And not only are you willing, but you're asking for more. Like, that proves to me that I can be in the trenches with you, because there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Like, you're in the trenches when you're producing a television show. I mean, it is, full on, onslaught of craziness coming from every different direction when you're an executive producer of a show. So anyways, it's I think part of that is just paying your dues. But again, I don't want to slip into the whole idea of, you're just have to put up with anything that happens, because I think we're in a new world where that's actually changing in entertainment, which is also a good thing.
That was a good job hedging to make sure you didn't upset anybody too badly. So well done on.
Well, these millennials are the only ones listening to podcasts, I assume. So. You guys are great. I'm actually an old millennial, so I'm talking trash on myself, but it doesn't count. I have a little sister who's about 10 years younger than me, and she's a true millennial. She's like, she gets it.
Yeah.
She gets it. She's not putting up with stuff I was putting up with back in the day. So I don't know.
All right. Well, let's get in a little bit about your time in New York when you met Annalisa, your now wife, which, by the way, anyone listening, that was one of the most fun weddings I've ever gone to. It's unbelievable. But yeah, talk about that first encounter.
Sure. So dating in New York is interesting. You're surrounded by millions of people, but it's actually can be a very lonely place. And so I think at the time I was on a dating app, at the time I was on a dating app, OkCupid, which was, I think since then it's been Tinder and all sorts of other coffee and bagels and all sorts of weird dating sites I've heard about. But back in the day, OkCupid was a place to go. So anyways, I met her on OkCupid. I messaged her and she at the time was moving to LA or to New York from San Francisco. And so it was actually very interesting. It was a great way to meet someone and talk to someone because she was not going to be, first of all, who signs up for a dating app and isn't even in the city that they're dating yet? I mean, that's just beyond ridiculous, but that's a question for her for another day. But anyway, she was like, we hit it off through the app and then we ended up, texting, and she was like, you know what, I'm actually not going to be out there for a while. So, or for 2 weeks. So, but we should hang out when I get there. So in the meantime, we basically had built this amazing, text and relationship. And at that point I was like, maybe we should get on the phone, and we talked on the phone, and it all went really great. But it was interesting because we were able to kind of build some of that, emotional connection before we ever actually met in person. So it was great. And by the end of 2 weeks, we were beyond ready to meet each other. And I picked her up at the time, and she was still staying in hotels because she hadn't fully relocated. She worked at Gap at the time, and they were moving her to their New York office. So anyway, so we went on a date in New York. I picked her up at her hotel, which was, I think, right near Grand Central Station. And I took her to Brooklyn, where I was living at the time, in Williamsburg, and we had the funnest night ever. It was just awesome. And it was that thing where we had connected mentally already. So I think both of us were like, if there's any sort of, physical, romantic spark, it's on, and so it was kind of cool because we could kind of, and I don't mean this crassly, but kind of get through we'd already been through the emotional stuff. So it was like, okay, if there's just some sort of spark here, we're good to go. So we had it, and it was great. And so we just had the best night of our life. I have a German Shepherd who's 13 now, named Jordan. And so, we'd met, we got oysters at one place and a couple of drinks. And then on the way to the next place, I was like, oh, I need to stop at my house and let the dog out. It was really just a ruse so I could literally have Jordan meet her. And if she didn't like Jordan or Jordan didn't like her, I was like, this date can just end right now. Cause
anybody listening, this is 1000% true. I know this to be true.
That's my little puppy. I had her since she was 6 weeks old. So anyways, then she hit it off. She was actually a little scared of big dogs. She had a pug at the time because she left with her mom back home. But they hit it off. Jordan liked her, and I think she understood. And I think a testament to Annalisa was like, she understood from the get-go how obsessed with this dog I was. And I think she was like, okay, if I want to be with him, I need to embrace the dog. And not to say that she didn't love the dog anyways, but I think it was very much understood that, like, okay, this is a package deal. And so she was in, and that was great too. Anyways, date goes on. We go to like a whiskey bar, and we play shuffleboard with, a guy and his girlfriend who was in town for like a traveling burlesque show. And then from there we had a few drinks at this point. And then after that, we went to grilled cheese and whiskey bar. Only Brooklyn has something fun like that. But it was the coolest, like most high tech, awesome whiskey bar. And then behind the counter, they literally have like one of those like George Foreman presses that they were making grilled cheeses on. Anyway, so things devolved from there. We literally, by the end of the night, we were both kind of drunk, and she was bird feeding me. I don't know if you guys know what bird feeding is, but she was like chewing up her grilled cheese and putting it and feeding it into my mouth from hers, which was in any normal again, that's a question for her. Like, why would that a thing?
I'm not totally surprised. I know you guys that well, that I'm not totally surprised. All right, so we're gonna run forward real fast. So
Yeah.
we
had a good first date. That's all. We were ups and downs. 5 years later, I had relocated to LA. She was still in New York, but we were doing long distance, which was not great. We kind of half broke up, half didn't. Then she basically was like, "No, I want to be with you. I want to try this." And we were like, "Well, let's do it." So she relocated to LA to Lucky Brand, and so then we kept dating. But then every once a year, I think I had some commitment issues that we can get into if you want, based on my crazy family. But my extremely crazy family.
That's going to create a lot of context for people. In just a minute. So if you're thinking turning it off, wait just 2 minutes. We'll get into it.
But anyways, so again, like once every year, once every 18 months, I would kind of, things would be going great, and I would create issues to kind of step away from the relationship. And then after, being broken up for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, I'd be like, what the hell am I doing? And I'd jump back into it. And anyway, so that was a cycle that I needed to figure out and stop. And then I proposed to her on May 6th of 2016, right? Yeah, 2017. And then we got married May 27th of this 2018. Yes, I know time and dates, and yes, it's all good. And we've been awesome. And again, like, it was that the thing about the relationship was, once I figured my stuff out and I had all this consternation about commitment and this is forever and I have to make this decision and I have to make the right one, that once I actually figured it out and decided to propose to her, I've never slept easier ever since then. And that's when it was hit home how right a decision that was, and how all the drama in the whole thing was so unnecessary. I mean, it was obviously all part of the journey, but it was kind of amazing to get to that place where I've never felt better about a decision.
Well,
and so here we are.
I know you to be awesome. You're one of my favorite people on earth. So you needed to have some kind of weakness that she could hold over your head for the rest of your life. So
exactly.
Now she is how many months pregnant?
7 months yesterday.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
We're officially in the third trimester, which is kind of crazy too.
So I'm excited to talk to you about the expecting father, because I haven't had that conversation and I haven't experienced it. And I guess it's only been 3.5 years, 4 years, but anyone listening hasn't had that opportunity yet. So tell me, do you remember when Annalisa said, "Tommy, we're having a baby"?
I do. It was actually, so we've, for the last year plus, we've been trying to figure out exactly where we're going to settle down. We were getting married and we were like, so is it LA? We're not the biggest fans of LA. We're both, she's from Oakland, I'm from the East Coast. I don't really want to go up north. So anyways, we were trying to figure it out. She had gotten a job opportunity in New York, so we went back, and it was actually really, it was a weekend where she was like, let's both go. We'll stay in a hotel and we'll figure out if we want to, if we see ourselves in New York with an actual family, because at that time we were planning on having a kid, but it wasn't, happening exactly yet. So anyways, we actually relived our whole first date that I just told everyone about.
Bird feed you again?
We didn't bird feed. We should have, but we went to Extra Fancy, which was this oyster bar we went to, and then we went to this other place called Maison Premier. I say Maison Premier, and then she laughs at me because it's not how you say it in actual French. Anyways, another really cool oyster bar. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is, we had a great weekend, but at the same time, we were like, could we actually be here? Not sure. So anyways, we take a late flight back Sunday night, go to bed, and then next morning at 6 a.m., she wakes me up in a total panic. And I thought something was wrong. I thought the dog was dead. I thought something happened. I thought she had cut herself or something, because she wakes me up and she's, oh my God, wake up. And I was like, what's going on? And at this point, we've been, I think, trying for actually trying, not just not trying, but trying for about a month. And she was like, I just took a pregnancy test and I'm pregnant. And she was like, she was just having like a panic attack. And it was 6 a.m. I was groggy, and I was like, I couldn't understand, because I was like, I thought this is what we wanted. Like, haven't you been trying? Haven't you been like literally like, by the way, Annalisa, as you know, is very type A and what had me on a schedule of sexual intercourse. So once it actually like worked, she was like freaking out. So anyways, I was like, I think this is good. But again, it's that thing where it goes from just, it got very real really fast because it goes from some kind of hypothetical, oh, we're going to get pregnant. But again, are we ready? Who knows? Fate will decide. And then also, are we ready? And it'll probably take a while. So we'll figure it out, And then again, it was like that thing. It's like, be careful what you wish for in the best way, because we were pregnant and then we've been on this ride, which has been fun and awesome, but also, and again, I actually would love your perspective on it, because it's interesting, first of all, being the dad, because there's all these things happening to her that just aren't happening to me. I can try to be as much a part of the process as I can, but again, baby's kicking her, baby's inside of her. She's been building this bond for the last 7 months that I don't have.
Yeah.
And anyway, so yes, it was an amazing, it was one of those crazy ways to tell me. I felt great about it. She was freaking out, but and then we got on the train. We scheduled the doctor's appointment to confirm it and all the stuff that comes along with it, and we've been on the ride. So that's how she told me. It was awesome. It was a good memory, because it was so funny, because she's so put together all the time, and she was just a mess. And I was like, what? This is a good thing.
So, tell me, who are the first people you told?
Well, we actually got in a little bit of a thing about this, because she ended up telling her mom that day and didn't tell me until 3 days later. So I thought it was, and again, it's whatever, it's her mom, but It's like, this is our secret for a second. I like the fact that we had a little secret that no one knew about. And then I don't know, I felt like she kind of, not betrayed it, but kind of just made it less special. And then after I found that out, I was like, okay, well, we need to start telling my family. So we told my mom, and then I think we waited maybe another week or two to tell the rest of my family. And I've 4 sisters and big family, so it took a while to make go down the phone tree. But yeah, I don't know how her mom reacted. I'm sure she was excited. Everyone knew we were pretty much trying. And then we were actually driving to the dog beach down in Long Beach, Rosie's dog beach, with our dog, when we called my mom and told her, and she was just my mom, and anyone that doesn't, she's just the most empathetic, sweet, supportive, kind of Zen woman there is. So it was really nice to talk to her. And she, what really made me happy, and it kind of makes me emotional to think about, is she was like, oh, I'm so excited for you guys. This is so great. Da, 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 da. And then we got off the phone, and then she called back maybe 5 minutes later and was like, I just want you to know that baby is the luckiest baby ever. You guys are going to be such good parents. And I don't know. It was just amazing. She was just like, broke it down where it's just, and not just, it wasn't because it made us feel good about ourselves. It was because I think it solidified the fact that we're welcoming a new family member, and that, our unit is going to be, a +1. And it's, thinking about, surrounding the wagons and just looking at things from a nuclear family perspective. I think it just underlined the fact for me, like, wow, I'm now the dad, and we're building this family, and this baby is going to be living a life that we are procuring for it, So I don't know, it was just really emotional, and it was just such a nice way to put it for her. And again, did make us feel very nice, because I do think we have so much love to give, and this baby, will be blessed, I think.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think exactly the same as your mom. So this is a good opportunity to segue into the context of your family as a whole, because you have one of the more unique breakdowns of family trees that I could think to conjure. So could you give us like a quick summary?
Yeah, sure. So my mom and dad are both German, like off the boat. They have accents. My friends like to make fun of their accents separately. Hunter, I don't know if you know Tyler, but Hunter Guerin has like the best impression of my mom. When he makes fun of my dad, it's like, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't hear it because I grew up with that. But anyways, and so I guess, so I have 3 older sisters, and then I was the first one to be born in the US. And then when I was like 4, my mom and dad broke up, and then my dad, he started to have a relationship with this guy named David, who is now who is not now, who is my stepdad, who has been, in my life since I was 4 years old. So about 30 years. And again, it's funny because now our family, is very much, I think, a great unit, and everyone's great. But, those initial years were very tough. My sister, first of all, just the whole, kind of having a gay father, now I think people have much different views of kind of, gay parents or gay relationships. But, when I was growing up in 1996, 97, I mean, it was very scary, not scary, but almost embarrassing in a way. And I'm kind of ashamed to say it, but again, all you're trying to do is blend in and not be different, and be tough. And then, so to have this kind of a gay dad, it was kind of this kind of really, it was a tough emotional thing for me to kind of deal with. And again, I think my commitment issues aren't coming out of that. It was just an interesting growing up. David is awesome. David is very loyal to my dad, and they have a great relationship. And Christmases, everyone comes together, and it's quite nice. So everything's good now. But again, there's a lot of drama when I was younger. And then my mom, I guess when I was 11, she ended up having another kid with a boyfriend at the time. So I have a half sister who I mentioned earlier, who's just the best person ever, and is now working on Capitol Hill, and it's just shows an example of how bright our future is. But yeah, I have 4 sisters. There's a lot of feminine energy flowing through my veins and through our households, and I have an atypical kind of parent situation with my dad and David. But just to speak to kind of how that my whole commitment issue speaks to what I'm, I guess, bringing to my new family is, and why it was hard to commit with Annalisa is this idea that I think my dad would say that he is bisexual and loved my mom as much as he could, and he thinks he's probably lucky because he can, as where only half of 50% of the population is available to you or I, Tyler, he says that 100% of the population is available to him. He can see beauty everywhere, and I'm like, okay, that's enough explanation. But just from that, I deep down inside of me feel like my parents got together when they were young. That was kind of what you did when German youth, you get together, you start a family. That's all they knew. But then for me, it's like they shouldn't have done that, and my dad should have known better. And I think part of it's my story about it, so I don't know if it's true or not, but my story is that they should have known better, and my dad shouldn't have put my mother through that. Like, I think that he probably was more gay than straight, and therefore he didn't do her any favors by kind of dragging her through this life and then them getting divorced, because obviously he needed to live his true life, I think. Mm-hmm. So out of that, I found it imperative that when I made the decision to get married, that it was forever, and that I was not putting Annalise in any positions where I was going to take it back, or it wasn't going to be forever. And so anyways, through a lot of therapy and a lot of soul searching and a lot of long exercise sessions, it was imperative that I figure that out before I put her through it. And so whereas I think under normal circumstances I would have been like, I love this person, she's amazing, she fills every hole that I have in terms of what I'm emotionally lacking, she kind of is buttresses all of that. It would have been, I could have come to that conclusion a lot sooner, but I needed to be sure, and that just caused a lot of stress and anxiety. And I think that was based on my upbringing, the fact that there was a lot of insecurity going on with everything that was going on when I was growing up. So that answering?
Yeah, most definitely. And I'd be interested to know, you're bringing up therapy, that I'm sure there are a lot of couples that are either thinking about getting married now, thinking about having a kid, even have a kid. Do you have anything that you could say that might kind of soften the blow to a man or woman's pride to say that they don't want to go to therapy?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, it's am I advocating, would I advocate therapy, or is there a way to explain therapy
maybe that's the better question. One, do you advocate it? And two, for somebody that you would advocate it for, how would you open them up to it? Just quickly.
Yeah, so no, for sure. Annalise and I, part of me proposing and part of me being like, okay, we are on this track to get married, and this is for good, because obviously, as you can imagine, she had a lot of trust issues around the fact, would I take this back, after a certain amount of time, if I got cold feet again or got scared, or whatever has been going on with me, was that we would go to therapy and kind of figure some stuff out together. And so we went to couples therapy with this great woman here in Burbank, and at the time, and we just become engaged. We were in a honeymoon phase, and so there was not really any kind of, you know, impending kind of doom of any kind. But the idea was to go to therapy wasn't because we need to fix necessarily like this huge issue we're about to break up. It was, hey, we're about to get married. You know, stuff's about to get really real in a lot of ways. Like, you know, this is forever. This is a huge commitment. There's going to be a lot of stress coming at us from all sorts of angles. Let's go talk to someone who, you know, is a professional at this and can help give us the tools that we need to be able to weather the tough times, because God knows there's going to be a lot of tough times. And so through that, you know, I think that was the best way for me to frame it, because people are like, why are you guys going to therapy? What's wrong? I'm like, nothing's wrong. Everything's great, but we want to keep it great. And so we're going to go to therapy, and we're going to learn how to talk to each other, to communicate better. And again, I think part of good communication is having discussions about where everything is coming from. Because I think, as a lot of people who are married or have been in long-term relationships can attest to, it's like, you're having a lot of the same fights. They're in different forms, but it's always kind of the same things underlying them. And our therapist always says, like, what's behind that? What's behind that? And, you know, for me, what's behind that is like, I, you know, came from a very chaotic household. So I need things to be calm and okay. Like, that's my most important thing. And for Annalisa, you know, she, I think has, you know, I'm not going to air any of her dirty laundry, but I think a lot of the issues she has all stem from kind of the same kind of root thing. So once you kind of can figure that out, it's like, okay, we're actually having a discussion about what we're actually talking about, as opposed to this other thing, which is the fight we're having, but it doesn't have anything to do with anything. And so that for me was like the most amazing thing.
So is there
that
a
therapy
way
gave
that
us.
you bring that awareness to each other when you're talking about something surfacey, that you know there's something behind it? Is there like do you say like a banana bread and like, oh, okay, now she's settled on her thing or your thing?
Well,
Like, how do
it's
you
actually
get there?
funny. We actually have a safe word called
Yeah.
banana
Banana? You shitting me?
yeah, it's been, I don't know why. Yeah, no, seriously. That's creepy, Tyler. But like when things get like super real, like we just say banana, and then we kind of have to take a time out. But yeah, it's actually funny because we actually do that all. It does, and I get really riled up. I can get in really foul moods, to be honest, about things, and I think she's really smart, and she's like, just, hey, banana. Or, you know, again, I think more my approach to it is, and what we say to each other all the time, we're kind of joking because like we love Lisa, our therapist, but Lisa always says, what's behind that? And so that's when we're having fights, we've kind of therapied each other in a lot of ways. Like, what's behind that? What are you actually angry at me about right now? What about me not doing this in this time is actually behind that? Like, what's the frustration here? And then we can actually, again, have a real talk, because at the end of the day, when your intentions are good, I mean, and fights don't have to be that bad, because it's like, I'm trying to do right by you. I want you to be as safe and comfortable and happy as you can be while you're carrying my baby. So let's actually talk about what's wrong, and I'll do everything I can to not do it, you know? So anyways, therapy has saved our relationship in more ways than one. And I fully recommend it, just because it has given us tools to figure things out. And again, it gives me perspective on where Annalise is coming from and everything that she does, and vice versa for her.
Yeah, I found that you know, I hate to interject with any of my own stories or anything, because the point is to extract them from others. But what you said about communication resonates so much with me, because it's not, you know, it's not just talking and communicating, but it's effectively communicating and, you know, really being comfortable with yourself and showing that, yeah, that's actually what's behind this. You know, it's not just, I'm not really pissed off that the bed's not made or the dishes aren't clean or that whatever. There's something behind it. And
Right.
if you don't get behind it, then it's not effective communication anymore. That's the most important
100%.
thing I can think of parenting and a relationship, effective communication. Well,
Right.
let's jump in a little bit about, you know, dad. You're a dad, man. Like, so what's your role now as a father, as a partner? What's your role now at home, or what do you perceive it?
Sure. Well, I mean, you know, it's actually interesting because we just moved this past weekend, and by saying we moved this past weekend, the moving truck actually came, took stuff from our apartment and brought it into our house that we just bought. But that move will actually take like forever. I think
Yeah.
that's what I'm learning about
Unless she
home
gets
ownership.
into serious
Never
nesting mode.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, part of buying a house was her form of nesting. So it's been kind of crazy. But point being, it's actually interesting to see her be. And again, I said this earlier. She's super type A and just likes to get stuff done and get stuff done fast. And by being pregnant and being now in her third trimester and having her sciatica going crazy right now and just not being weak and baby just kicking the hell out of her, she's just hobbled. And so it first of all, it helps delineate exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of the guy stuff. I'm the one carrying stuff. I'm kind of setting the house up as much as I can. I mean, and again, so it's just interesting because she's not usually in that role. She's not vulnerable in that way. So for her to actually say, I need help, I feel bad for her, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, this is actually her asking for help and this is me delivering it. This is me being able to, shore up a weakness that she has at the moment. So that's kind of what and I think that's maybe a bigger metaphor for her being pregnant. Is like, I'm just trying to support her as best I can. I'm jumping up, I'm getting whatever she needs at whatever time. You need those vitamins, you need this, you need that. I'm going to try to make your life easier. And I think that's been my main goal is taking whatever stress I can off of her and the baby in whatever way I can. So, I mean, that's kind of been my main focus. It's making her feel supported. It's making sure that I'm going to all the appointments that I can and making sure she feels good about, the fact that, in LA, you need daycare basically before the baby's born. You need to get on a list. So just kind of handling that stuff and making sure that we're at least on wait lists and doing all that stuff. It's, and again, it's just my form of making her feel supported. I think I'm just trying to support her in every way I can. I'm looking for every little thing I can do to make her feel like she's has a partner in this. Because again, she's lifting most of the weight right now. I feel terrible that I can't do more,
Yeah, I think
it's tough.
I can't speak necessarily with authority because I wasn't as good as I could have been, but I expect that you will feel similar over the first year or so that your baby's born. So let's do some kind of short answer, kind of lightning stuff that's very father centric.
Mm-hmm.
What are 3 qualities you have that you think will be important as a dad?
Oh God, 3 qualities, positive qualities.
I didn't specify.
Yeah, right. I think that I am extremely, and part of what I think makes me good at my job actually is I think I'm very empathetic. So I think that I can kind of relate to our baby, to our child as it grows on a very fundamental level, which I'm very excited about. And I'm excited to obviously be a disciplinarian and give, I guess bumper lanes for as the baby grows up and becomes its own person. But also I'm excited to kind of, I guess I'm excited to help them flourish in that way where I just want them to be themselves. And I think I'm one skill I have is thing I'm looking forward to providing is a safe environment for a baby to be whatever baby wants to be, and it's a little girl and I'm like really excited to meet her and all those things. So that's one thing. I think empathy and wanting what's best for her in whatever form that takes. I think I'm a good listener. So I think that comes with the empathy and being there. And I think that, I think I'm fun. So I'm and I tell Annalise all the time, and we're just so stressed right now with the move and with baby coming and with, money's never enough and child care is this whole thing that I alluded to. But it's like, I mean, in what world do you have to get on a waiting list before baby's even born? I mean, that's just, I don't know. That's just something I've never, you hear things, you see movies and you see these kind of parents that have to, do this whole rigmarole to do these things. And I'm like, not for me. I'm like, I will put my baby in. Baby, anyways. It's just it's a crazy, frustrating thing to know about. So
it's probably a somewhat new phenomenon as women have earned or been given the appropriate respect in the workforce. More and more women, like the gender roles aren't what they used to be, which was mom stays at home, dad wins the bread. And you guys both have very successful careers, and it's unfair to either of you because you both ambitious in your professional life to ask either one of you to stay home.
And then that goes into its own other thing, right? It's like, we're when you're have a nanny or when you do daycare, it's like you're really just, kind of half of your paycheck is going so someone else can watch your kid. And so what does that mean? And I think we're both so fulfilled by our jobs, and Annalisa is so fulfilled by her job and so good at her job that it's just a shame to know that it's, and I guess that's life. That's being an adult. It's like making these decisions. It's like this or that, it's never easy, but yeah, just kind of traversing that and figuring that out is kind of crazy. Anyways, going back to the original thing, we are so stressed right now, and it's just, there was a couple of times even this weekend during the hardest times of the move and just being like, that is never going to end. It was just like, oh my God, like Annalisa, like, let's just think about this. We're going to have a baby and there's going to be so much love here. And I'm so excited to, go on walks and hang out in the backyard and just, just have fun, and I think that's what we really do have to offer. And I think my mom really hit it on the head when she called us, was like, there's no way it's not going to be super fun.
No, you're absolutely right. You guys are going to have a blast. All right.
Yeah,
I'm going to keep you on getting these.
Yeah. Sorry.
In order. What do you think is going to be your role as a dad in your kid's life? I know it's tough to make that a short answer.
Yeah. I just want to be a sounding board, honestly. And again, like, I think, from the babies that I've met are kind of, their personalities are fully formed from an early age. So I think if I can just be the moral compass and offer support however I can, but also, I don't want to be an overparenter either. And I want them to kind of figure things out on their own. And I do want to be a resource, but I don't want to live their lives for them, and I think that's something that Annalisa and I both need to check a lot. It's letting them be themselves and, not overparenting, because I do think, and maybe you have some perspective on this as well, but, we're, and speaking of like the work-life balance and work and family balance, women now are, and a lot of it falls on the woman, but you're kind of expected to be everything for your kid at all times. And there was even a study that said, I think, women now spend as much time with their kids as parents, as mothers in the 1970s, but they also have full-time jobs. So it's like, we're just being pulled too thin, and so anyways, part of, I think where I'm coming from, it's like, I do want to have a balance where, like, I don't want to overparent. I want the kid to have its own life. I think the most important relationship that I have is with my wife. And I think maybe this is, I don't know, somewhat not the right thing to say, but I think the baby is secondary. I think it's our unit. The best we can do for our kids is have a strong unit with each other, and then the kid comes off of that, and so I don't want to overparent, and I want to be as supportive as possible, but I do want baby to have its own life.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about the mom role. Sarah, is back to work now, and I swear to God, both my kids they could be opening a pickle jar and they will walk. I'll be sitting on the couch with them, and they'll get up off the couch and go ask their mom to do. They're so dependent upon their mom. And I got to say, you can ask me to do it. I'm right here. All right. What's the greatest hope you have for your child?
The greatest hope, just a long, happy life, full of love.
Love it. What do you expect will be your most challenging time as a dad?
Actually, I think the onboarding process. Honestly, it's. I know that it's hard for me to have a relationship, and with my nieces and nephews, the experience I've had with them, it's that, like, it's really hard for me to bond with them until they can kind of give something back. And I do think that it's going to be tough for me, like the first year when babies. And again, I know it's going to be different with my baby, but I do fear that it's going to be hard to bond with her until she can kind of. And by the way, I'm really excited for the toddler years and actually going and doing stuff. And that's when I think I'm really going to show my worth. But it's, when baby really just needs its mom, and when she's breastfeeding and, there's just a lot of crying and sleeping going on, that to me is my biggest fear, that I'm not building the correct bond with the baby. That's I think my biggest worry at the moment. It's just that bonding at an early stage.
Nah, you'll be great. Just like you said, taking care of Boo-Boo and jumping in whenever you can. So as you have a wife who's 7 months pregnant, imagine every other man whose wife or girlfriend is 7 months pregnant, 5, whatever. What gift would you give to them if you could give them anything?
A man or woman?
Man, what the expecting dad? What would you give every expecting dad on earth?
Oh my God. Maybe therapy. Maybe a therapy session. Honestly,
I love it.
just like a moment to be able to, and it doesn't. Let's not even call it a therapy session. Let's talk. Let's give it an hour just to air grievances, because as the supportive partner, it's my role is not to complain. So being able to complain for an hour about things high and low, I think would be a great gift to give.
I love it. That's great. Now, this is a question that I told you I was excited to ask you, given our friendship in your industry. Who's your favorite TV or movie dad?
You know who I've always liked? It's Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights, and I think that maybe speaks more to just the relationship between the parents, because that's a relationship that I've always wanted to emulate, because I think that they're just so honest and open with each other. That relationship from a, in a TV perspective, I think is one of the most aspirational relationships on there. And I think that from that, there's a great communication, and there's a great, they've got a great situation going with their kid. And I think there's open and honest communication. And I think they're both kind of getting fights, but it's always in a really kind of clear and communicative way. Outside of that, probably Tony Soprano. I don't know. Walter White.
Yeah, that's a very supportive. So when Tony Soprano, you're going to be in the waste management business here pretty soon with all those diapers you're going to be changing.
Can't wait.
What's on your list of something as a father that you will not do? When I'm a dad, I will never do this.
Before, and like I just alluded to earlier, before it was this idea of I'm not going to be jockeying for spots in daycare, but as I'm doing that, I'm first of all realizing that there's a lot of things I probably will say that I will never do that I will definitely be doing. What will I not do as a father? Yeah, I really don't foresee myself kind of putting up with a bratty kid, I guess. I just won't do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a legitimate answer, because it's like you're gonna have a bratty kid and you're gonna have to put up with it. But I don't know. I have this image in my head of if kid's gonna act up, I'm just gonna leave the room and be like, no, not doing it. But that's gonna change.
I did that to my son this week. He was under the bed. He didn't want to brush his teeth. So I just said, all right, good night. Turn the lights off and close the door behind you.
Okay. I like that.
No, it's funny.
Bye.
Every night. Yeah, bye. Bye-bye. It's every night. It's the same thing. You brush your teeth every day. We can do it the easy way or the way where I drag your ass out from under the bed and stick the toothbrush in your mouth.
Right.
It's always the latter, and he thinks it's hilarious.
The hard way. I'll go with the hard way.
The hard way is the fun way, Dad.
I think that's on you. You keep giving him the option of the hard way.
Yeah, I do. All right. So what kind of dad, when it all goes down, would you like to be remembered as?
I think just supportive. An unconditional lover, really. And I think that's what I've always wanted, or from a parent, is just unconditional love. Because I think once you have that, you're everything really else falls into place. It really does.
Yeah. All right. I pulled up a website that's got some baby questions. I'm gonna throw at you real quick, just because some of them are silly. How many diapers do you think you're going to go through a week for a year? Best guess.
3 times a day times. How do you do that, Matt?
That's already hilarious that you think it's going to be 3 a day.
5 times a day?
Oh, you'll just find out.
I don't know. 3 seems like a lot.
All right. Let's see.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. When are you going to buy your first minivan?
Never. That's something I'll never do.
Yeah.
And my sister and brother-in-law just bought the most high-tech Chrysler kind of minivan, and it's the lamest thing ever. It's the best version of a minivan, and it's still the lamest thing ever. So there's no way.
Have you
There's no
have
way.
you been on the inside of it?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's space age, and it
Until
has
you,
everything you want. And secretly, I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is so great, but not going to do it. Therefore, I'm definitely getting one, and probably soon.
All right. Who do you think is going to be the disciplinarian, you or Annalisa?
Annalisa. Yeah, Annalisa for sure.
Where are you most excited to take your baby? Just show your baby off.
Oh, to show my baby off?
Yeah, I know. Both of my kids went to the same place for the first time. Like we left the hospital, their first place was Old Busted Brewery. Was their very
Oh, that's
first.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe brunch at like Firefly or somewhere,
yeah.
just to hang out.
Get
And
back.
honestly, it's just a test to see if we can have a normal life with baby. I think that first time's going to be stressful. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
But maybe brunch of any sort would be good.
brunch.
By
We
the way,
don't have brunch out here yet.
well, it's something to aspire to. I'm sure brunch is never going to happen, but
No, you'll
it'd be
be
a nice
fine.
idea.
Until they start moving around, you'll be fine. Babies in their little carrier thing or a snap for dad.
Is that the technical term, the little carrier thing?
The little carrier baby thing. Whatever. We've graduated from that. And it's a distant memory. All right. So having a girl, do you have any girl specific concerns?
Not really, and I've heard from a lot of people that girls are a lot harder than boys, which I'm sure it makes sense. But at the same time, we actually had thought for a second that it was going to be a boy, and when she was convinced it was a boy, and then, anyways. But point being, like I was kind of scared to have a boy, but then I was like, you know what? I'm actually looking really forward to raising kind of responsible, respectful, good men in this world. I think that's such an important thing in this day and age. So I embraced it, and then the doctor was like, oh, it's actually a girl. So I just think that I'm so used to feminine energy. Like I said, I'm surrounded by women. Annalisa, the dog, all my sisters, my mom. No, I actually feel really good about it. I think it'll be cool. I think it'll be great.
But what do you think about the contextual difference in our eras? Like we grew up in the, basically 90s kids. You have any concerns about the world that you're introducing your daughter to relative to the world that we grew up in?
Oh, totally. Well, first of all, and not to get too political, but I mean, just the idea that the Earth is warming, and the oceans are rising, and there are these crazy storms coming at us, and we're in LA, and there's a lot of fires going on right now and whatnot. It does honestly, feel somewhat irresponsible having a kid in this world.
Yeah.
But what I always go back to, it's like this idea, like I maybe our daughter is part of the solution, and I think we still have time to figure things out. But again, the world, and for better or worse, is just more complicated than it was when we were growing up. I think you could, I very much was raised in a neighborhood where I could just kind of go out, get on my bike, and go wherever as long as I was home by dark. I would go to the pool all day, and that's where I was. And you just can't do that, especially in LA in our neighborhood. It's like that just doesn't fly. I mean, that's just I guess would be even looked at as bad parenting now. So yeah, I'm overall, it's like it's a shame that and maybe it's part of just being in LA, and I'm not back in Warrenton, and that's a guilt that I have. Like I think everyone wants their kids to kind of have their growing up, and we had an idyllic growing up. It's green and nice and lush, and there's grass everywhere, and that's an amazing thing in Virginia. And here, while you have it to some extent, it's just different. It's desert, and you're always reminded by the fact that like there's no water. It's just like kind of a desolate kind of thing to bring a child into. So there's some guilt there, but again, it is what it is. We're put on this earth to reproduce to some extent. I think that's what we're kind of programmed for, anyways. And I'm just keeping up with the Joneses.
All right. So Tim Ferriss, who you probably know who he is, asks a question that one of my favorite questions to ask. It's the billboard question. Big billboard on the side of, the biggest highway out there, bumper to bumper LA traffic. They're going 6 miles an hour. So it could be a fairly large message because everyone's driving so slow, but what advice would you give to expecting dads that they would all get benefit from, that would fit on a billboard?
I would say don't take it personal is a good one. It's not about you, honestly. It's not. You're in a support role, and it's just about and I think going back to it, and part of I think what makes a successful person entertainment, and what I would hope would be a successful partner, parent, everything, it's to be of service, and I think that's part of it. It's just be of service.
Cool. I love that. What are you most looking forward to about being a dad?
I mean, just in general, just watching this little person grow, and have a personality, and kind of see things for the first time, and yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things that we take for granted and are jaded by, and I look forward to those moments when you can kind of see things for the first time through a child's eyes, and to be able to be there on her journey as she grows up, and to, at the end of the day, and I think that's part of maybe the question about how I'm remembered. It's like I was always there and supporting her, and being, and again, it's her life, but to be able to say that I took part in somehow of the development of this human, I think is kind of an amazing and awe-inspiring thing if you really think about it.
Yeah, Richard Branson is on record. I'm going to butcher, so forgive the paraphrasing, but it was like, don't measure the success of my life by, X, Y, Z, but, by my kids.
Yeah.
Was perfect.
It is. I think it is. It's leaving a legacy in certain ways. I mean, that's part of me running around, and I hope she's and I'm sure she will be, but a positive member of society that ends up, being additive.
All right. So do you have any questions? I've never asked that question before. Why not?
Well, yeah. First of all, we probably have to have this conversation offline, but I mean, I'm curious what your perspective is on all these things, and like what you think your biggest job is right now. Like what is your actual job description, would you say, as a parent?
Right now, with a 3 and a 4-year-old, I probably have to say being an example, because they are sponges, and we don't give them the credit that they deserve in terms of their ability to understand things and their capacity to feel things. And I mean, I don't care what any book or pamphlet says, they are so much more pure and in tune than we are. And so I feel like it's my job to, particularly when I'm in front of them, be the very best human I can be, communicating with my wife, or communicating to them, or the way you treat, somebody who might be looked at as your superior or your inferior, or however you want to measure it. Like, everybody gets kindness and love and respect. And I feel like that's kind of my biggest role anyway.
I dig that. I get that. Yeah, for sure.
It's not so right away, but because, they don't perceive quite yet, I don't think, but at 3 and 4, definitely.
Yeah. I get it. That's good. I'm always so curious also about the fact that, like, your kid at some point is going to realize that you're mortal. And I think that, it took me it's just interesting when, I always think about that moment when someone's like, oh, my parent's just a human just like anyone else. I'm always
curious to know what you think. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think it's an inevitable thing. So I think my biggest question is, like, should I just fail early to get it out of the way so they don't have to put me up on a pedestal that they don't need to, But in very seriousness, I don't know. I think it's a balance, because I think that there's something magical about a parental figure that makes you feel so safe when you think that they have the world in their palm, But at the same time, I think it is also can be destructive if you have this idea of them going too late into life, and then whenever that realization comes, it's how do you break an old habit in a way that's been building up forever? So I don't know, I kind of struggle with it, like exactly what the expectation is, and that's part of, I think, being the example, right? It's like, of course, trying to live your best life, but then how do you show that you're fallible at the same time without
Well, let me pitch this to you and
scarring them?
Yeah, tell me what you think. Maybe it's just a product of being honest. If you are unrelenting honesty and always being honest will often yield the answer, I don't know, which might show your kid right away that, one, you can be trusted because you'll always be honest with him. Jesse Straighten, interview with him, that was so impactful to me when he said, you got to be honest about everything. It's so easy to say because I said so or whatever when you're explaining something, but the honesty might reveal you as, human,
Right.
and still earn the pedestal in that different way,
Right.
in the positive
Right.
example way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder that too, because we both come under the shadow of, capable parents who are really great at a lot of stuff. So finding out that your parents are not perfect, I remember,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember.
And I think that's also part of the fact that they're sponges, right? And that they are trying to get answers. So why is it a bad thing to just either say you don't know the answer, and maybe that's interesting too, because I'm curious about, I have some people right here with some friends who have kids that are getting into the age where it's starting to ask about sex. And I'm always like, well, what's the right answer there? Like, do you overshare, undershare, give it to them in a context of what it is? But like, does a 4-year-old, because there's the scientific way, like, oh, this is sex, da, 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 da. And there's also like, when a man loves a woman, and it's like, well, how honest are you with them? And I think that also turns into like, what do you tell them about Santa Claus and all this stuff? It's like, I don't want them to call me a liar, but also I do want to give them some magical kind of imagination, kind of building stuff. And maybe that comes into the things that we're talking about with the pedestal. It's like, do you pretend there's a pedestal? Do you break it down the pedestal? Because there's also, you want to have magic in being a parent because you're an authority figure, and you also want to be that in your kids' eyes. That's what I want to be. I do want to be someone that they can aspire to, but is also honest. So I don't know. It's an interesting balance that I'm kind of looking forward to striking, but I'm also scared about it.
Yeah, we're all kind of experimenting, aren't we? Nobody knows the answer. I guess that's kind of the point of the conversation. But yeah, I actually did talk to Jesse again because he's a farmer. His kids get exposed to like death and the birds and the bees a lot sooner than other kids.
Yeah.
So I asked him about death, and he was, well, the other one is really about sex because Daddy, why is that cow on top of that other cow, doing that? And he suggested just answer the question they ask. If the question is, why is that cow on the other cow? Sometimes the answer is occasionally they do that and they get satisfied.
Yeah, maybe you don't have to draw them a diagram of exactly how it works, but
well, since you asked about that cow, let me tell you about porn. That's a big jump. Just answer the question.
Yeah, just answer the question. And if they ask more questions, maybe you answer those. But you don't. Maybe that's actually funny that you say that, because I actually was talking to my boss the other day, and he was actually talking about the death conversation, and has a policy of being open and honest, but it's also like he's also very cognizant to only answer the questions that are being asked. And if they ask more questions, then you give them the answers, but you don't maybe lead into the, and then this is this, and then that is that, and then that is, it's like, no, just, they're curious, but they're as curious as they want to be and should be in their moment. So just be open and honest, but don't start pulling out the graphs, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's a kind of a nice segue. One of my favorite parenting tips is just get the fuck out of the way. Like,
yeah,
you don't have to paint this roadmap for them. Like, they'll figure it out. Sometimes your job is to just get out of the way.
Yeah, that's something I'll need to remind myself and remind Annalisa for sure.
What's going to be her greatest parenting characteristic, maybe?
I mean, I think she has this unique ability to just empower people to the nth degree. I mean, this kid is just going to feel from day one that it can do and be anything it wants to be. That's, how she's made me feel from the jump. She's definitely helped in every aspect of my life, from my career to my relationships. And it's always, helped me aspire to be a better person. And I have no doubt that that's going to be what is in that child. I think, on the flip side of that, I think that Annalisa is type A controlling. And I think we've already had discussions about the fact that it's imperative that we don't, try to control every aspect of this child's life, let it be who it wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And again, create bumper lanes. But again, this kid, like, as you say, I think it's a great way to put it. It's like, it's going to get out of the way. It's going to figure things out on its own.
Yeah.
I keep saying it because, again, it's like this idea in my head of like, until that baby comes, it's it. But we have a name, we know it's a girl. So anyway,
are you sharing names yet?
we just told, my family's been told, and then we told Annalisa's dad and stepmom this past weekend. But the baby's name is going to be Sawyer, so it's kind of an ambiguous.
That name sucks. Don't name your kid that.
That's why you don't tell names.
What a stupid name.
But and then it's going to be, if baby's born in May, it's going to be Sawyer May, maybe Sawyer June if she's born in June, and then possibly Sawyer Rose, if she's rosy cheeked. So I don't know. We have some options on the middle name, but we like Sawyer. It's like a nod to kind of literary, kind of our love of kind of literature and humor, and and when I told, I kind of had a list of names that I ran by Annalisa, and she liked some more than others. But when I said Sawyer, I mean, we felt from day one that this baby is mischievous, just the way she tumbles around in Annalisa's belly. So she actually got really emotional when I said it. She's like, that's the name. So we never had a doubt from that moment that she kind of had that reaction.
I love that. Mischievous, definitely between you and Boo Boo.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a family trait. So.
All right. Well, I have the final question in regards to the interview, and it is, in the event that this recording lasts forever and ever, generations to come, and you get to offer a piece of advice or a message to share with your generations, take this opportunity to give that message or share that advice.
Oh, wow.
I know it's a lot of pressure.
I don't know. And again, it might just be the current political climate and the state of the world, but it's like, I don't know. Just be a good person. Like, I don't know what's so hard about that, but be a good person and be of service. That's like my mantra. It's like, be of service, because, we are humans, and humans have to have connection. And part of building that connection is being of service to other people. And I really do believe that we're all in this together. And so, I think that there's just so much political infighting, and everyone's mad at each other. And there's these kind of polar extremes of kind of ideology going on. And it's just, be of service, be a good neighbor, and we're all in this together. I mean, I don't know, my whole idea of like, the second that aliens invade Earth, like, we're all going to be on the same team, and we have this kind of this need as humans to see us versus them. It's why we love football. It's having your team, your tribe, and going after other ones. And it's like, let's just be of service. Let's all be together. There's a lot more, makes us similar than makes us different. And I think it's about embracing that. And I think that's the only way we're going to survive as a species, is to get on the same page and realize that, it's not worth, all the fighting, I guess.
Love it.
I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think everybody should listen to that.